While the world is sleeping and totally distracted, we see prophecies from the ancient Hebrew scriptures are coming to life like never before. Truly, we are at the end of the age. It was in 70 of this common era when Emperor Titus, the Emperor of Rome, marched against Jerusalem and laid siege to it, destroying the set-apart temple, the temple of the Creator of the universe. And by doing so, he also exiled the Jews from Jerusalem so they could no longer worship there. The Sanhedrin was forced to move. And in 425, the Sanhedrin, which was the Jewish court, completely disbanded, and the Jews had been exiled throughout the Roman Empire. We see that through the writings of Josephus and other Roman historians even, that many of the Jews were carried across the Red Sea into Egypt, which was a territory, part of the Roman Empire, and there they were sold as slaves. They were also sold throughout the Roman Empire. And because of this, now we refer to this time period as the Jewish diaspora. So the diaspora was long. However, Israel has now been a nation for 70 years. In 1948, they were revived as a nation. And now, in 2018, they have enjoyed 70 years of statehood. This is very important to comprehend in the timeline of history, because the scriptures are very clear that the Jews would return to their ancestral homeland. Therefore, before 1948, it seemed that many of the prophecies that had to take place would not take place because the Jews had not yet returned to Jerusalem. However, today, that is not the case. In fact, not only have the Yahudim returned, but they have Kohanim, which are sons of Aaron, which have been training for their duties in the third temple. The Temple Institute in Jerusalem has made ready many of the articles and furniture and tapestries and clothing and things that will be used in the third temple. The prophecies of the scriptures are very clear that a third temple will exist. This is very important because the world went crazy when they read the writings of Nostradamus, who claimed various abstract thoughts about the end of the age, whereas the Hebrew prophets literally told us that this day would come, and yet the whole world sleeps and slumbers and is unaware. The scriptures are clear in the writing of Yeshayahu, or Isaiah the prophet, chapter 2, verse 2. And it shall be in the latter days that the mountain of the house of Yahuwah is established on the top of the mountains and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow to it. And many people shall come and say, come and let us go up to the mountain of Yahuwah, to the house of the Elohim of Jacob, or Jacob, and let him teach us his ways, and let us walk in his paths. For out of Zion, or Zion, comes forth the Torah, the law, and the word, the Debar of Yahuwah, from Yerushalayim, from Jerusalem. So therefore, it is written, in the latter days, there will be a house of Yahuwah, and it shall be established above all the mountains and above all the hills. And now we live in a time where it is nearer than ever before. Only days ago, the Sanhedrin, which has now come back together, the Sanhedrin being the house of judgment of the Yahudim, the Jews, the judges, had come back together and decided that now is the time to begin reenactments of the altar dedication. They invited 70 nations for the final day of Hanukkah to observe a reenactment of altar duties that would take place, such as wine offerings and also a burnt offering of a lamb. However, this lamb was not sacrificed on the stage. It was a prepared lamb that was already prepared, and the meat was laid on the altar. But it was completely burned, a whole offering. And again, not only did this take place, but also the incense was also burned on the altar of incense. And this again was done as a reenactment, but it was done to educate the nations about the house that is about to be established. Now this is very important because we have sons of Aaron, Kohanim, who have been participating in these events and readying themselves for years now. For the last 2 or 3 years, Passover sacrifices have been done, just not literally on an altar, but they have been practices. They have been practicing for this moment, practicing the slaughterings, practicing all these things which are written in the Torah. Now we know these are sons of Aaron or Aaron because of their lineage, because they maintained their lineage, they maintained their ancestral names, and we also know through DNA today, DNA testing is very clear. So the Israelites have returned. The Kohanim, the priests, the sons of Aaron are ready to do the sacrifices. And the altar, only days ago, has actually had a meat offering that was put on it for the first time in almost 2,000 years. And we are living in a time unlike any time in human history. This has not been seen. What is happening today has not been seen. And people are just yawning. They're so disillusioned by the things, the activities of the day. They're worrying about the stock market, the economy. They're worried about their day-to-day. They're worried about their business. They're worried about their families. They're worried about, all these trivial aspects, while the creator of the universe is observing and he is preparing his people for this final hour, for this time, because the prophecies are coming to pass. It says that it shall be in the latter days that the mountain of the house of Yahuwah is established upon the mountains. So we know that it is about to transpire. When? In the latter days. Micah chapter 4 tells us the same thing. In the latter days it shall be that the mountain of the house of Yahuwah is established on the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow to it. And many nations shall come and say, come and let us go up to the mountain of Yahuwah, to the house of the Elohim of Jacob, and let him teach us his ways, and let us walk in his paths. For out of Zion comes forth the Torah, and the word of Yahuwah from Jerusalem, from Yerushalayim. Now I want you to hear what it says further in the context so that you understand the monumental thing that has transpired here, because this will just go down to many of you as just another day. Another thing has happened, another one of many things. But this is a very important moment in history, unlike all the others, because we now have a moment in a timeline. We know for sure that when this altar is fully dedicated and the continual sacrifices are done, that when they are put to an end, that we should anticipate many evils and destructions that will take place in Jerusalem, and also including the famous Armageddon or Harmageddo battle in the valley of Yehoshaphat or Jehoshaphat battle that will take place, the war that will transpire. So these things will transpire and they will take place. What does the context say? It says, and he shall judge. Who is he? Well, we're going to learn about that in a moment. He shall judge among many people and reprove strong nations afar off. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither teach battle anymore. But each one shall sit under his vine and under his fig tree, and no one to make them afraid, for the mouth of Yahuwah of hosts has spoken. For all the people, talking about all the other people other than Israelites, for all the people walk each one in the name of their mighty ones or their Elohim, but we walk in the name of Yahuwah, our Elohim, forever and ever. So listen to what it says. It also says, in that day declares Yahuwah, I gather the lame, and I bring together the outcasts and those who I have afflicted. And I shall make the lame a remnant and the outcast a strong nation. And Yahuwah shall reign over them in Mount Zion from now on and forever. This is the time that is coming rapidly upon us, that Yahuwah shall rule over them forever and ever. So part of the reason for the reestablishment of the altar and the house is to make the name of Yahuwah known to the world. This will trigger a time in human history where people will want to know the name of Yahuwah. They will want to know his fame. They will want to know more about the Torah, the writings of Moses and the prophets. And they will seek after the great rest of the Messiah, who is Yahushua. And this time is now approaching. Zechariah, I want to read Zechariah to you so that you understand further that when these things have happened, the sons of Aaron, they have put a meat offering on the altar, the Mizbeach, and they have also lit the incense. And they have signaled to the world, to the 70 nations, that we are now in the final hours. Now, do they fully understand that? I believe they probably do, because the anticipation of the Yahudim around this third temple is the coming of Messiah. Now, many of you are going to say, well, of course, they're going to accept the anti-Messiah. Well, we're going to read some scriptures first. Let's go over to Zechariah. We want to go to Zechariah, and we're going to go to chapter 12. Okay, it says in chapter 12, verse 2, "See, I am making Yerushalayim," that is Jerusalem, "a cup of reeling to all the people all around, and also against Yehuda," or Judah. It is in the siege against Jerusalem. "In that day that it shall be that I make Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, a very heavy stone for all people, all lifting it are severely injured, and all the nations of the earth shall be gathered together against it." All the nations will be gathered against it. Now we'll jump forward to verse 9. "And it shall be in that day that I shall seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem," which are all the nations. "And I shall pour on the house of David and on the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of favor and prayers. And they shall look on me whom they pierced. And they shall mourn for him as one mourns for his only son." And the reason that it says him there is because when it says they shall mourn for me whom they pierced, it literally says Aleph and Taw, the first and the last, referring to the King Messiah himself, whom they pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourns for his only son, and they shall be in bitterness over him as the bitterness over a firstborn. And then we read about the great mourning that will take place when the tribes of Judah, Yehuda, and Levi, and Shimon will be weeping here. And this also shows us that truthfully, according to biblical scriptural prophecy, that we know that the Yahudim, the Jews, the Israelites, have to be returned in the land when this takes place, when the nations come against Jerusalem in the final times, and they look upon him whom they have pierced, and the scriptures shall come to pass. And this is what we now see. Now, also I want to read a portion in Zechariah 14. We're going to start in verse 2. "And I shall gather all the nations to battle against Jerusalem, and the city shall be taken, the houses plundered, and the women ravished. Half of the city shall go into exile, but the remnant of the people shall be cut off from the city." So in the last days, the Yahudim will be conquered in the land. They'll be conquered by the nations for a brief moment. And then it says in verse 3, "And Yahuwah shall go forth, and he shall fight against those nations as he fights in the day of battle. And in that day his feet shall stand upon the Mount of Olives, which faces Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall be split in two from east to west, a great valley, and half of the mountain shall move toward the north, and another half toward the south. And you shall flee to the valley of my mountain, for the valley of the mountains reaches to Atzal, and you shall flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, the sovereign of Yehuda, and Yahuwah my Elohim shall come, and all the Kodashim, the set apart ones, with you. And in that day it shall be that there is no light, it is dark. And it shall be one day which is known to Yahuwah, neither day nor night. But at evening time there shall be light. And in that day shall be that living waters flow from Jerusalem, half of them toward the eastern sea and half of them toward the western sea, in summer as well as in winter." But I want you to hear this, because this is the pinnacle. This is the purpose. This is the reason that all this must be in the latter times, because it says in verse 9, "And Yahuwah shall be sovereign. He will be Melech. He will be the king, the one that rules over all the earth. In that day there shall be one Yahuwah, and his name one. Yahuwah Echad, Shmo Echad." There is one Yahuwah, and his name is only one. This is very important. We know that when the King Messiah comes, he will rule from the temple. There is no doubt about it. There are false teachers in these last days who will deceive your mind and tell you otherwise. They will tell you there is no need for a temple in the future when the Messiah comes. However, my friends, Ezekiel chapter 40 through 48 and Zechariah chapter 6 and numerous other prophecies tell us that the king, the branch, the one who is to come, Yahushua, he will establish the house of Yahuwah. He is the prince that will exist in the temple that we read about. And this is a time that shall take place. Now, many people's theologies will not allow this to take place because they have all these different thoughts in their mind. And there are many people who hear me right now who are concerned because I'm talking about the temple, because they're saying, well, the anti-Messiah must come to the temple. Well, we know that that will happen. We know that. I think most people do. So let's read some of those verses so that we can help everybody see a fuller picture. So yes, this is a triggering moment in time for a bigger event that will transpire soon. And part of this event is found in Matthew 24. So I want to go to Matthew 24. I'm not going to keep you long because I just wanted to tell everyone, to prepare everyone for what I see coming is coming very quickly. Matthew chapter 24, verse 3 through 4, Yahushua is sitting on the Mount of Olives, and his taught ones come to him separately, saying, say to us, when shall it be? And what is the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? The first thing Yahushua warns, he says, take heed that no one leads you astray. Talking to his own disciples, how much more is he speaking to you 2,000 years later? Do not be led astray. Now let's go on down to verse 14. And this good news shall of the reign of the kingdom, that is the good news, the Bashar, the good news of the kingdom of Yahuwah. It will go forth and be proclaimed into all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then shall the end come. And when you see the abomination that lays waste spoken of by Daniel the prophet, or Daniel the prophet, set up in the set apart place, let he who reads, let him understand. Then let those who are in Yehuda flee to the mountains. Now, why does it say, let him who reads understand? Because before Yahushua even came on the scene, the abomination of desolation had already been put up by the Grecian king Antiochus Epiphanes. The book of Maccabees tells us that the whole purpose of Hanukkah, which it was the final day of Hanukkah, when this altar there was a reenactment of the altar and the dedication process before the people, that the whole purpose of the Hanukkah was because the Greeks had begun to introduce Hellenization through the king Antiochus Epiphanes, and he had begun to ban the law, ban the Torah, to make it so Jews could not be Jews anymore, but had to do all the customs of the Greeks. And he defiled the temple and slaughtered a swine, a pig, on the altar and set up an idol of Jupiter or Zeus. This already took place before Yahushua said it. So he's saying it, and he says, let him who reads understand, to let them know that this will happen yet again. And a similar event did take place in 70 of this common era under Emperor Titus. But we know that this is not exactly what he's talking about. He's talking about the end of the age, the very finale of time. How do we know? Because it says in verse 29, and immediately after the tribulation or distress of those days, then the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give its light, and the stars shall fall from the heaven, and the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. And then the sign of the Son of Man, Adam, shall appear in the heaven, and all the tribes of the earth shall mourn, which is where? Zechariah chapter 12. In verse 10, we also see it in verse 14. And then they shall see the Son of Adam coming on the clouds. Daniel chapter 7, verse 13. Of the heaven with power and much esteem. So this has not happened yet. This is what is going to happen. So the concern is the abomination of desolation, because the altar will be profaned. And you have to understand, though, for it to be considered abomination of desolation, it had to be first Kodesh, set apart. Yahuwah will allow this altar to be set apart, but it will be defiled by man. It will be defiled like it has been in the times of old. And the message of Hanukkah was that the Maccabees overthrew the Greeks, and they actually had to rebuild an altar because they wouldn't use that one that had the pig blood on it. They rebuilt an altar, rededicated it, and that is where the word Hanukkah comes from. The word means dedication, to dedicate the altar. It is found in the Torah. It means to dedicate the altar literally. Now, In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3, we see in the Brit Hadashah, the renewed covenant writings, it says, "Let no one deceive you in any way, because the falling away is to come first, and the man of lawlessness is to be revealed, the son of destruction," talking about the anti-Messiah, "who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called Elohim, that is worshipped, so that he sits as Elohim in the dwelling place of Elohim, showing himself that he is Elohim." So this prophecy was given in anticipation that it will be in the last days that the lawless one, the anti-Messiah, the one who comes in the stead of Messiah, that he will come and set himself up in the temple of Yahuwah. Well, that temple doesn't exist right now. But what I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, as we're closer today than ever before, the cornerstones are prepared. The menorah, the golden lampstand, is prepared. The various instruments are prepared. The priestly garments are prepared. The reenactments of the sacrifices are being done. The meal offerings are being done. The wine offerings are being done. You live in a time unlike any time in human history, and many people are only focused on the anti-Messiah. People saw that this happened. They started getting all upset. Well, it's an abomination. Well, the anti-Messiah is coming. Well, this and that. Let me tell you something, brothers and sisters and everybody around the world. Your concern should not be of anti-Messiah, who is only flesh and blood. Your concern should be not even of Shaitan, the evil one himself. Your concern should be that the creator of the universe is about to reveal himself in a way like no one has ever seen and no one has ever heard. It is going to be a dark, a terrible day when he brings the judgment on this earth and he judges this planet. People, it is time to be prepared. Get ready, because Yahuwah has said, "The nations shall know that I am Yahuwah." Ezekiel 39, verse 25. "Therefore thus said the Master Yahuwah, now I am going to bring back the captives of Yaakov or Jacob, and I shall have compassion on all the house of Israel, and shall be jealous for my set apart name." Skip down to verse 28. "And they shall know that I am Yahuwah their Elohim." So this is the time. Yahuwah is going to do all these things, and he is going to have mercy on his people, Israel. Now is your opportunity through the King Messiah Yahushua to join in and to prepare for his coming, to prepare for the Malkut Yahuwah, which is at hand, brothers and sisters. Do not be deceived by the evil one that is going to come, working all sorts of wickedness and lawlessness. But I'm not concerned about that right now, because I have videos dealing with that subject, and I invite you, please go and view them. I have so many videos on the end times. I ask that you'll go and check out the video Armageddon. Also check out the video The Day of Yahuwah. Also the video The Apocalypse. These are 3 different videos. Please watch them. Immerse yourself in the understanding of what is taught there, and study the scriptures thoroughly in context, and prepare yourself, because these things will happen whether you agree with it or not, whether you accept it as true or whether you don't. They shall transpire with or without you. But Yahuwah is inviting you now, if you are hearing my voice, to come and serve him. Now is the time. The time is at hand. Shalom.